welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to a special episode where we get to talk to a really interesting creator, I would say, who's not only taken his love of Disney and Bill Watterson and Calvin and Hobbes, and also his love of Star Wars, and combined them together in the most interesting ways. Welcome, Brian.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me.
And you are Brian Kesinger of, I believe, still Disney animation fame.
Yeah, hopefully.
As of today.
Yes, right.
And Lil Kylo, which is the crossover Star Wars, Calvin and Hobbes cartoons that you do.
Right.
And most recently announced back in August, the Droid Tales book, which you are also going to be doing the illustrations for.
Yes, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's kind of a dream come true. I've been fortunate to have a few dreams come true, and this is certainly one of the big ones.
Well, you were, I believe, one of the youngest animators to be hired by Disney Animation Studios.
Yeah, that's right.
You were hired, yeah.
Yeah, I was 18 years old. Actually, technically, I was 17 because I had sent my portfolio in my senior year of high school. When I was submitting portfolios to different art colleges, I thought I might as well send one into Disney and just to get feedback. Mm-hmm. And they ended up calling me back first before the art schools, and they said, "We'll take you now."
And you're like, sold.
Yeah, I didn't know what to say. I was like, and the only thing I could think of was that I said to him, but I have to finish Spanish class first, because I was just so shell-shocked, and I knew I wasn't doing that great in Spanish. So I'm like, I got to graduate. And there was a long pause on their end and rustling of papers. And then they asked me, how old are you? And I said, I'm 17. And there was an even longer pause. And they said, well, when do you turn 18? I said, in May 4th, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's meant to be. So they said, okay, you'll start in August. So that was on Tarzan, was my first movie.
Oh, that movie is so powerful from an animation perspective because of the physicality of Tarzan and how much was involved with. I remember even on the special features of Tarzan, they had the storyboards and then the rough drawings of the animation. And they showed how the scenes would develop. That's really great.
Yeah.
What were you doing on Tarzan?
I was in a layout department, which in animation that kind of acts as the cinematographers. So I would take the storyboards and try to push the camera angles depending on the storytelling. And then once I picked an angle, I would draw the backgrounds. So all the jungle scapes, all that sort of thing, the treehouse was stuff that I worked on. And then with that movie in particular, because we were pushing the envelope of 3D integration, I helped out on those big kind of camera move scenes.
Where the camera moved around Tarzan during some of the action scenes and stuff like that?
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, it was a pretty amazing first movie.
That's such a great experience too, kind of being thrown oh, hey, you were just in high school and now you're now in that environment.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. I had to find an apartment. I grew up in Orange County, just in the, close to Disneyland. But not close enough to the studio to commute. So I remember telling my mom that, I think I need to find an apartment. So I liken it to kind of like Tom Hanks in Big. All of a sudden, I had my own apartment. I was getting paid to draw. It was surreal. It was pretty great.
And getting paid to do kind of what you always wanted to do. That's
yeah.
This is Star Wars, and on the podcast we talk a lot about the myth and symbolism of Star Wars and Joseph Campbell and things like that. And you got to follow your bliss. You're living the dream.
Yeah. Knock on wood. It's been pretty great. That was 22 years ago now, which is kind of crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how did the love affair with Star Wars start? Because you are a big fan. When I tweeted, hey, I want to watch The Last Jedi. And I wasn't able to that night, but you were like, I am watching it. And you have 3 Stormtrooper helmets on your shelf right behind you that I can see and nobody else can see.
Right, yeah.
See, how did this love affair with Star Wars start?
It started with Return of the Jedi. That was the first movie I saw in theaters. The first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters. And because I was born in 1978, so I was a year after New Hope had come out. So I remember very vividly we were late to the movie of Return of the Jedi. I was a little like frustrated. I'm like, oh, we're missing it, and it was at the Buena Park Mall, and it was an older theater. It was back when the theater doors literally opened, and there was one aisle down the theater and the screen at the end of the aisle. Yeah, and I remember vividly opening the doors to the theater, and right when I opened the door to the theater, the massive door of the Rancor was opening up on the screen, and I was probably maybe 6 years old. I can't do math, but I was young, and I just thought, "What?" I think
you were 4, because
4, right?
Yeah, 4, yeah.
Yeah. So here's 4-year-old me seeing this giant monster coming out, and I was hooked. I was like, "This is incredible."
Yeah, my best memories of Star Wars are of Return of the Jedi at that age. Like I'm 4 years younger than you. And yeah, like from I don't know, 2, I remember watching all of the movies on Betamax. And that Rancor scene and the fight is so visceral for me. I still remember it that way.
Yeah, no, it's so great. I mean, New Hope is definitely my favorite of all the Star Wars movies. But Return of the Jedi will always have that nostalgia for me.
And like the memory of just experiencing it, with your family and seeing that open. That's great.
And part of what helps too is my brother, he's super into it as well. So we bonded pretty early. He's 2 years younger than me. We go nuts for this stuff and still do,
Yeah.
We're still texting each other when new images come out, and we play X-Wing, which is like a tabletop miniature game.
Like from Fantasy Flight?
Yeah, Fantasy Flight game. We play that a lot. So yeah, we are geeky brothers through and through.
That's great. And I find that Star Wars is very much connected to who you experience it with.
Yes.
Like you have these memories playing as kids, probably with like the toys and all of that.
Actually, speaking of toys, I'll remember when my mom and my dad were really big into it as well. And I'll never forget when we were playing with the little die-cast spaceships. We were playing TIE Fighters. And I went up to my mom and I said, hey, let's play TIE Fighters. And she corrected me and said, no, that's a TIE Interceptor. That's not a TIE Fighter. And so I was in good hands.
Yeah, like she made sure all of the knowledge was there.
Yep.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
So, as you've grown up with him, obviously you said New Hope was your favorite, but, we had the extended editions that came out probably just as you were like starting your career.
Yep, that's right.
And we had the prequels come out in Clone Wars and, all of these other things.
Yeah.
With Disney and the acquisition and stuff like that. Like, what triggered you to start like drawing Kylo as Calvin and Hobbes? Like I find it a very appropriate parallel, like especially with Rey being almost like the Susie character.
Right.
From the comic, right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting because I consume all the movies, all the stuff with a smile on my face. Like it's the one go-to I have, one of the go-tos I have to just really enjoy myself. But there was something about Force Awakens as a movie that really struck me and took me back to the Return of the Jedi experience. And in fact, even when that first trailer dropped at Celebration, I remember watching the live stream when they showed the initial trailer reveal with the famous "Chewie, we're home" line from Han.
Yep.
I remember just watching that because I was actually going to drive down. I was on my way to drive down to Celebration in Anaheim, but I was watching the feed as I was getting ready, and that trailer came on, and I just got major goosebumps. I thought, like, oh my gosh, this is like Star Wars to me. Being a little older when I saw the prequels, it didn't quite speak to me as much as the originals did. And that's not judging because I know people love the prequels as well. And as well. They should, they're super fun. And I have a different kind of nostalgia with those as well, because I had just started my job and I was a grown up. But with Force Awakens, when I saw that, I'm like, oh yes, really fun characters, really dynamic relationships, and this villain in Kylo Ren that just we hadn't seen before. It was, he wasn't just a black and white character. And there was, conflict in him. We saw his face in the first movie instead of having to wait till the third movie.
Yeah.
So there was something, and then those tantrums, or as I call them, the Sith fits, that you would have were so funny to me. But it's interesting because the little Kylo stuff, it actually started with the drawing of Rey. The first one I ever did was a drawing of Rey and Bb-8 on her little scrap metal sled.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I saw the movie for the first time, I thought, oh, that reminds me of Calvin going down his red wagon. And then the image just flashed in my head of like, oh, I should do Rey like that with Bb-8. But I then started drawing Kylo as Calvin, because Calvin is such the problem child that I couldn't go past the image of Kylo being the intergalactic problem child, right?
Yeah.
For Han and Leia. Because what's so great about those Calvin and Hobbes comics are the interplay with the parents, and just that whole backstory of what must it have been for Han Solo and Leia to raise
Kylo.
Right.
Well, Ben Solo at the time.
Ben Solo,
right?
Right. And so I started by doing direct overlays, right? Like I would take an actual Calvin and Hobbes comic and redraw it with the new skin, right?
Right.
So it would be the same exact joke, same staging, and all of that. And
just
it just
the words are a little different in the style, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I might throw in a Star Wars reference. Then it started to develop into its own thing, and people really took to it. So it's the first time I've ever had something go viral, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it is. I would say it is viral because I would say parts of the fandom want him to be almost like this irredeemable villain, and then there's other parts of the fandom that are like they see the conflict. I mean, especially after The Last Jedi and kind of all of the levels of gray that were experienced, and they like, I don't know how much you follow like the book canon and stuff, but there's actual like in Last Shot by Daniel Jose Older, there's a scene where Ben Solo is a little kid in his pajamas. And it's like he's just like this cute little kid, and so people like to imagine him like a kid. I think that very much jives, like little Kylo as a concept jives with people, and they're like, no, we want to see him have had a normal childhood in a way, like, and it's almost like this amazing, although mashup headcanon in a way.
Right. Yeah, no, it's pretty interesting. Even there's that line in Last Jedi where Snoke says to Kylo, you're nothing but a child in a mask or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that. I was like, oh, little Kylo. But yeah, it's. I think it's a more mature storytelling to have a character that you're not quite sure if he's good or he's bad. I mean, obviously he killed Han Solo, which is pretty bad. Unless, I like that theory where they've yet to reveal that maybe it was Han that pulled the trigger on the lightsaber. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that. I'm
like, oh, that
like, and he actually like helped him. Like, He used his hand to like press the button or something like that.
Exactly, because then by doing that, Kylo would still have some good in him because he didn't actually kill his father, right? Yeah. Which I think, oh, that's so good. But going off of what we've seen, he has killed Han Solo, but he did hold the trigger on his mom. He didn't kill her. So we'll wait to see. I'm very excited for the next episode.
Yeah.
It's on a path now that it truly can be anything, which is what excites me the most.
And like, it's just as powerful of a cliffhanger as Empire Strikes Back way
Yes.
back in the day when it's like, no, I am your father.
Right.
But now it's more like the resistance is like 6 people on a spaceship.
Right.
And
Right.
the First Order is in charge, like
With the
Supreme
madman. Right.
leader Emo Ren. Like,
Right. Exactly.
like what is gonna
Yeah.
happen?
I know. I
It,
know.
and I think that like not having a villain in our minds is
Yeah.
like, okay, what are the possibilities and all of
Right.
that?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm into it.
Yeah, yeah. And you've been given some great opportunities because of Little Kylo, like to do the sort of almost same style for Solo.
Yeah, no, it was super cool. I mean, it was a crazy journey in seeing these drawings go viral. And
Mm-hmm.
that first week or second week that they had been going out, and my wife Jenny, who runs our Etsy store, all of a sudden was getting messages through Etsy from the Hollywood Reporter, from Variety, from BuzzFeed that they wanted to like cover and share the art. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, this is crazy. And then each time one of those big outlets would share it, it'd be another wash of new eyes to come and take a look at it. And yeah, it started to get more opportunities. It kind of culminating to even one of the messages we got from Etsy was from the office of the Prime Minister of Canada.
Yeah, I was going to bring that
And
up because I'm from
yeah,
Canada.
oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a message from someone in the Prime Minister's office, and his job was he's the photographer. So he's
Mm-hmm.
the photographer for the Prime Minister. And he says, oh, my boss really likes your artwork, and he'd like to commission a piece. And here I am thinking like, oh, his boss, like maybe the managing photographer in the building or some other level. And then when he mentioned Mr. Trudeau, the floor just kind of dropped out. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Why
So
not?
was the reference for it their Halloween costumes that they
Yes.
used that one year? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I loved their Halloween costumes.
Oh
And
my
just for the
gosh.
listeners who don't know this, like Justin Trudeau is a huge Star Wars fan. So the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, loves Star Wars so much.
Mm-hmm.
And he dressed up, and I think his wife also dressed up as Leia, and he dressed
Yeah,
up
she was Leia.
in maybe the Luke or the Han outfit. I'm not sure which one it was. And then
He was in Hoth gear Han,
yeah,
and like, she was Hoth Leia.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sometimes in Canada, it's just smart to wear snow gear on Halloween
Right.
because literally it could snow at any moment.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And
Yeah.
in that picture, like I think there's also like an Elsa
Yeah, because his daughter was Anna.
or Anna. Yeah.
His
And
other son, his youngest son was Ninja Turtle, and then his oldest son was Thor. So
yeah.
it was like mashup upon mashup in this one image.
And they're all in that like Calvin and Hobbes,
Yes.
like cute style. It's so cute. And there's a tauntaun made out of snow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I'll link
Yeah.
to it like in the liner notes
Oh,
so people
great.
can click on it and see it and see Justin Trudeau, the Instagram photo of Justin Trudeau holding the picture.
Yeah, well, that's the funny part because they ask how much I charge for commissions, and I'm like, oh, it would be my pleasure.
Yeah.
He's quite an aspirational leader, and it would be my honor. And I said, but maybe a picture of him holding it would be nice. Yeah, like a month later, I get Canadian mail and a big stamp on it that says Office of Prime Minister. And there's a really nice picture of him holding it framed in his office. And I'm like, oh, amazing.
That's awesome. And to me, that is the wonder of creating itself, right? So you
Yes.
created something
Right.
off of a creation that is a
Right.
mashup of another creation.
Yes.
And it's almost this like transformative like journey that these ideas have gone through. And then it reaches all the way to the government of Canada.
The world leaders, right? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy. I mean, it is becoming our new mythology and something that we can all relate to in various ways. And yeah, I mean, the whole Lil Kylo thing purely came out of doing something that I loved, right? Like, I'm fortunate enough that I get to make movies for a living. I do my own art on the side, but this Lil Kylo stuff was just born out of, wow, I love Force Awakens. I love Star Wars. I love Calvin and Hobbes. Why not have peanut butter and chocolate at the same time? And I think that coming from a genuine place of fandom is what appeals to people. And people can sense that energy, you know, that it's not a fan art to make a quick buck. It's fan art because you're a fan.
It's
and
fan art, like, with love behind it.
Yeah,
that's the point, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm not the first, obviously, to mash up pop culture with Calvin and Hobbes. There's so many great pieces, and oftentimes the one of Han and Chewie on the Falcon gets attributed to me, but that was by an artist named Chris Wall, and he had done that years ago. So, but I think where people latch on to mine is because it has a little more story into it, and just how it just kind of fits. So going back to your question, Disney finally gave me a call, and they said,
like, your other boss.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's so weird. Because I was working on Frozen 2 at the time, and I get an email from Disney, and they go, we really love your Lil Kylo stuff. We love how you've been developing him into his own character, right? Because I had started to move away from the Calvin and Hobbes overlays and actually create one-panel comics that were just its own thing.
Its own thing, yeah.
Right. And they're like, we're really interested in that. Would you mind doing some promotional art for the home release of Last Jedi? And I was amazed. So I wrote back, I said, does this make Lil Kylo canon? And
we'll have to ask Pablo Hidalgo that.
Yes, right. But yeah, so that was amazing. That I was now having a meeting on the Disney studio lot, the main studio lot, with marketing about ideas, and I was writing scripts for Lil Kylo cartoons for Disney.
And getting paid to do something else that you love to do, which is Star Wars. Right.
Yeah. So again, I'm incredibly grateful and humbled by these opportunities. And that partnership then continued on to Solo, because they wanted to see what I could do with the little Chewie character. So
he is so cute. Like, the little Chewie is so cute. And I love especially your R2-D2.
Oh, thank you.
And, like, you know, kind of leading into that, one of my favorite panels is R2-D2 holding little Kylo. Because I have this, like, headcanon that, like, that is what R2 is, or sort of speculation in a way, but, like, that is what R2 is waiting for. He has always given advice to all of his owners throughout the years. And he remembers everything, and he knows the story of Star Wars. That one day he's just going to, like, sit Ben Solo down and talk to him and say, look, kid.
Listen, son.
This is everything that has come before. I know the story. Let me tell you the story of the saga.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. That was definitely a fun one. And then I think that one in particular started to get the attention of the publishing group for their Droids book.
Yeah, and you can see that with the, I guess, concept art, or I guess the cover, maybe?
Yeah, they released the cover,
Droid Tales, and it's going to be called Star Wars Droid Tales, C-3PO Does Not Like Sand. Which I love, because I'm, like, the biggest fan of droids. And actually, November is going to be devoted entirely to droids on the podcast.
Oh, awesome.
Like, all about them, because I don't feel like people pay enough attention to these two droids in Star Wars. And but I love how it's described. It's like, so it's after, obviously, The Force Awakens, because it has C-3PO, R2-D2, BB-8 on a special mission on Tatooine.
I know. They're going back.
Where they are befriending banthas, cheering on pod races, and have a hard time focusing. Will they have some fun in the sand? It's good that everybody's favorite protocol droid is to keep the mission on track. Poor C-3PO. He just wants to plan parties.
Right. Right. That's
like,
that's not his lot in life.
No, like, and like now he's like a spy master. Like, poor guy. Like, he just like, honestly, all we need is like, I don't know, a bar mitzvah, a wedding, like something
right.
for the droid to plan. Like, and he will be happy.
Maybe he'll get his own standalone movie and it can be C-3PO Party Planner.
No, I mean, there's that episode of the Clone Wars where he's like planning a party and getting stressed out of his mind. So even in that situation, he's not happy, actually.
No.
And like Anakin had to go send him on a like special mission, like with R2. Like, let's just get you busy.
Is that the one where he's got to like get the special fruit or whatever? Yes, I remember that one. Yeah. That's so funny.
And then R2 ends up like getting like hacked by, he visits the droid spa and then ends up getting captured, and like parts of his memory of like the Senate building layout are stolen. This is right before Cad Bane ends up like taking the whole place hostage.
Right, because there was that little fish guy, right? He's like a little fish bounty hunter type guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah. That's awesome.
I'm actually in the midst of a Clone Wars rewatch right now because of the new episodes that are coming out. So it's fun to revisit those things and kind of think like, okay, what I love about Star Wars is that like there's parallels and themes that are repeated over time. You know, that very like Star Wars, it rhymes. And that's why I think when you create something that feels so genuine, like Lil Kylo or like the droid book, it's like, it's going to feel real because it comes from this very genuine place that understands the fundamentals of Star Wars. Right.
Yeah. No, it was so fun. And, you know, they invited me up to Lucasfilm to have like the initial meeting because the book is being written by Caitlin Kennedy, who's one of the authors and editors at Lucasfilm Publishing. And so she's written this really fun story. Like when I read the script, I was like, oh, this is so great. And I got to meet with her and our other editor, whose name is Jason, and I always slaughter his name. It's Vosowist. I'll send it to you. Both have welcomed me into the galaxy far, far away in such a nice way. And they had me up. I got to meet with the story group.
Oh,
I
fun.
met Pablo and Leland up there, and they kind of did a once-over of my drawings, making sure that everything was kosher. Because the interesting thing about 3PO is he's got a fixed expression, right? Like, how do you express in something that only the features are locked? Since they saw how expressive I could get with Lil Kylo, because he just has a helmet. And also I had some experience when working on Big Hero 6 with Baymax.
Yeah.
You know, like, how do you emote with a character that's got very limited facial features? I've been able to funnel some of that experience into 3PO, with also digging back into a bit of how they dealt with him on the Droids cartoons in the 80s, you know, which were a little more expressive and a little more cartoony. So it's been really fun kind of establishing what the style for this book is going to be.
It's got to be a challenge with 3PO in an animated form, because part of what makes Anthony Daniels in the suit so successful is his mime training.
Yes.
And his mask training, right? Like, so he knows how to emote with body language. Is it similar with like Kylo and like how you draw him, and that you like do things with the angle of the helmet versus necessarily changing the facial expressions?
Right. It's like, if I'm going to make Lil Kylo angry, I'm going to take the bottom line of his helmet and make it more V-shaped to act as like his eyebrows. Or if he's scared, I'm going to use that same line and have it be like a rainbow shape, so that he's like surprised. So that's like little ways that you can get those expressions in there. And with 3PO, you know, he's got that very distinct kind of eye ridge. It's that double hill eye rig, so I can use some of that to get those expressions in there. It's a little bit more of a cheat, but I think it plays really well.
Yeah.
In the art. So.
Well, he certainly looks upset on the cover. So I'm very much looking forward to reading the book and seeing how it plays out and what it looks like, once it arrives. And I believe it's coming out in June next year.
Yeah, I think that's right. I know for sure next year. I'm not sure when. So you probably know better. I'm super excited for it.
So other than The Last Jedi, which you tweeted me last night, what are you currently consuming from a Star Wars perspective?
Definitely the films. I've been going through, what was it, in anticipation of my meeting up at Lucasfilm and going up to ILM. I'm like, I'm going to take the week and watch every Star Wars movie in one a night and while I draw. And so that was great, just kind of going back into those in continuity, right? Including.
So you went all the way from The Phantom Menace in continuity, like all the way through?
So Rogue One before New Hope.
Oh, nice. And did you watch Solo in there as well? Like, did you?
It hadn't come out yet.
Oh,
otherwise,
okay.
I would have. But at the time, it hadn't come out. So I watched, Phantom Menace through Last Jedi. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm so pumped. And then for me, mostly it's the soundtracks because I listen to a lot of music when I draw.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thing that's probably the least distracting and can get me kind of hyped for what I'm working on. So definitely the soundtracks for all of them. I've got like a mega playlist on my iPhone and I listen to all of those. And then, like I say, my brother and I always tend to get into the tabletop gaming. I've been painting a lot of what's it called? Not Imperial Assault, but the new one, Legion, Star Wars Legion, which is
nice.
Fantasy Flight's kind of Warhammer type Star Wars game.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been getting into painting the models of those and just, in my spare time.
In what time you have between the 3 jobs now that you've mentioned?
Right. And it's October. So juggling a lot of plates.
Yeah, exactly. And like the little like bumps that make starships more realistic in Star Wars, like more analog in a way, are called greeblies or something like that.
Yeah, the greeblies, that's right.
Greeblies, yeah. I had a model builder on the podcast because I was like super fascinated with building at scale. And he specializes in scale models and really understanding like how to build the right scale for the movies and stuff like that. And so he has these huge like meta articles on scale modeling on his site.
That's amazing. I gotta listen really into that.
Yeah, no, and he's just really wonderful because we chatted and he's really into like Rebels especially and like Sabine and
cool.
Kind of like what I love is hearing people who just genuinely love the fandom, like love what Star Wars creates and then create something from it like you have.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of nice to, I hate to use the word ownership, but to just be inspired, I guess is a better word. Like just to be inspired and to, take what you love and interpret it in other mediums, like I love seeing how, cosplayers show their fandom and their art through making costumes. And I follow a few people on Instagram that like Star Wars food is their thing, and they're always posting like amazing food creations and blue milk milkshakes and all of that sort of thing. So it's super cool to, and because there's so much content out there being generated by Lucasfilm and by the creators, that it's a sandbox. It's a sandbox that we can all play in.
And it's going to inspire somebody to do something creative and take it to a new place or look at it from a new angle.
Right,
and that's what I love about like people who create from the creation, which is very much your story of how much you loved Disney and Star Wars growing up. And then taking that and making that something that you get to do every day.
Yeah. No, it's pretty special. And I remember when the acquisition happened, because I was still at Disney I was in story. What movie was I working on during that? It might have been Wreck-It Ralph, I think I was working on when they acquired it. And all of us in the story department were like popping champagne bottles because we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to get discount on Star Wars toys now.
Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
exciting.
really?
So yeah, because as an employee, you would get discounts at like the Disney stores and that sort of thing. So, and sure enough, the Disney store started carrying Star Wars stuff. And,
oh, that was like the best moment was when you can actually start to get more Star Wars things without like really having to search for them, like go to Toys R Us or whatever. Like now you know, okay, I now know wherever Disney things are sold, there's also going to be Star Wars. It was like it opened up that channel of merchandise again, and they started to be a lot more free with the licensing too. I would say like Funkos, like you know, getting although Funkos have to be baubles instead of minifigs because of where the license lives and what is what, right? So there's a whole like world of collecting that I don't really understand either, but it is out there.
No, there's all sorts of shoes and all, you know, amazing. And then the stuff like that Sideshow does, or not Sideshow, Sideshow, those amazing collectible sculpts that they sell that are incredibly detailed. And it's really great because now, you know, the Disney engine is in full swing. And it's fully operational.
This fully operational merchandising system.
Exactly.
So how do we encourage like the next generation of creators that are inspired by Star Wars or Disney, or, you know, how do we make sure that they stick with it? Because I think that's the key to your story is like you were encouraged and you were mentored, you know? Like, how do we make sure that happens for the next generation upcoming?
It's a good question. I think by encouraging people to do what makes them happy, as opposed to trying to assume what would make other people happy. It's one of the dangers. I love social media has been so great for artists because it suddenly opens up the world to everyone's art in a way that could never be done before, right? And it's super powerful, super inspiring. But the one downside to it is that you can get caught in a bubble of what gets you likes, right?
Yeah.
So I've seen it where it's kind of capped artists a little bit to where they get to a style that they're comfortable with. And it's what they think their fans like. And then they never progress from there.
They never challenge themselves to try new things or to experiment and fail, right? Because it could be something that's just not very successful with anybody, but, you know, they learned something they had to take away from that experience and they needed to push themselves in that direction.
Right. There was a very kind of eye-opening moment for me towards the early days of the Lil Kylo drawings where I had posted one and you know, I noticed, hey, this isn't getting as many likes as the one I did yesterday or the day before. And what did I do wrong? And maybe I should change. And I kind of caught myself and I'm like, whoa. You can't be like that because you'll be chasing your tail, you know? And so you just have to realize that things come and go in waves. And, you know, as soon as I focused back on what made me laugh, that's when it would get shared and people would come back. And so, and even after I stopped doing Lil Kylo for a while, or not stopped doing it, but just started doing other projects, I was worried. I was like, oh, am I going to lose a lot of followers because they came for Lil Kylo, but now here's this other original stuff that I do. But
Victorian Auto.
Right. Yeah. Them being one of them. But they stuck around and they stuck around because I think they saw the same amount of care and love being put into that stuff that was being put into the Star Wars. So I try to keep it all fluid and moving. And I think that if young creators keep that in mind, then we're really in for a treat, because they can be empowered knowing that they have an outlet for their art, but then not letting that inhibit them, so that they can just blow the lid off everything. And I mean, I see the level of art coming from students nowadays versus like what my art, even my own daughter, my son and daughter both really love to draw. And, they're better than I was at that age. And that's not just proud dad speaking. I mean, it's gotten to the point now where my wife will even get confused on if I drew something or if my daughter drew something. So that's pretty awesome. So yeah, I think that's it. Just being true to what speaks to you in the art will make it that much stronger.
And I feel like that's a good reminder for fans too, because fundamentally Star Wars is being created by artists and storytellers and people that are creating. And we as fans might want things to happen in a particular way, but we have to kind of almost let the black box remain sealed and let them, create and ignore us in a way, like we want to show our love and appreciation, and, sometimes honest critique on certain social issues needs to be said. But I think it's important to say, let the artist go with what the spark of inspiration is taking them to, because then it will feel interconnected with us as humans. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
And it'll be true and real and all of that. Yeah.
Because that's what we want, right? And that's what speaks to us.
That's what art is.
Right. And good art always spurs conversation. And there's no shortage of conversation about Star Wars, especially over the last couple of years, And I think that, while I respect everyone having an opinion, that that it's okay not to like something, and it's okay for things that you like to be different, because the original stuff that you do like still exists. You can go and watch that stuff and still live in that world. But things, we got to be open. Otherwise we're just going to be caught in that same loop. Like I talk about with the young artists, if we just keep reiterating on ourselves, then that's not good either.
And I find that, like, as soon as people take a step back and stop criticizing as much, right, and just say, I don't like this, and actually start to try to create on their own, they start to see more of the fundamental soul in almost everything that is out there that has been created. Because they see, hey, this was, people's blood, sweat, and tears that went into this. This is like them on a page in a way. Yeah. And they can feel that. And they can also feel when things have fallen flat. And when you're tuned into that kind of creative, like what you said with Lil Kylo, that it feels genuine, when you're in tune with that and you're creating yourself, like even this podcast, as much as it's not like, a drawing or anything like that, I'm still creating something, and I'm creating content, and I'm putting it out there, and I have a production mind and a hat in mind, and I want to say certain things. So it ends up being put out there to help. And sometimes I have, again, episodes that I felt good about, but I never listened to like what people are telling me that they like and they don't like, because the important thing, adding more to the conversation rather than taking away.
Yeah, right. And that's a very good way of putting that, because it is that sort of thing that you as a creator have your outlet and it's generating joy in you. And that generates joy in others. And nowadays we need that sort of thing more than just the heavy critiques. So yeah, I dig it. I think that, I think there's also a bit of oversaturation in all media, which in a way makes it seem a little more disposable. So people can be a little more flippant about it because
they're not used to not having it.
Right.
Whereas like way back when we just had the 3 movies.
Yes.
Like, I remember what it was like.
Right. Yeah. I remember how excited we got when Shadows of the Empire came out, because that had a new soundtrack for a book. Like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of like when you used to like, even like I use this analogy too with comedians. Like you used to listen to comedy albums and you'd have 4 or 5 of your favorites and you would memorize them by heart.
Mm-hmm. Because you'd listen to them over and over and over.
Yeah, because that's all you had.
Yeah.
And it was much more limited. But now, you know, I go on iTunes or on Netflix and there's 200 comedy specials.
Yeah.
And they're all great, but you kind of just watch them and move on. Mm-hmm. So it's easier to forget about the creatives that go into making something.
Yeah, and like the hundreds and sometimes thousands of people that go into making a movie or making a show like The Resistance and or Rebels or Clone Wars. Like it's mind-boggling how many people and the love that they've put in behind the creation. Yeah,
and you know what? They're all fans too.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing, and that's what's hard, you know, is when, and I've seen it too on some movies that I've worked on, you know, where fan reaction hasn't been great compared to other ones. And it stings, especially when the criticism comes from the same fandom that you belong in, because it feels like you're kind of being attacked by your own. But at the end of the day, that it's like, okay, then on to the next project, you know?
You mentioned the oversaturation. Like, how do we exist in a world where this has become our new reality? It's like quite literally anybody can have access to any content out there that they want. And there's also like amateur quote unquote creators like myself, or like podcaster, like YouTube creators, people making, you know, there is almost an unlimited amount of access to content. Like how do we become, I don't know, a better fandom in some ways? Like how do we encourage this fandom to be better?
Yeah,
I feel like that's such a nebulous question. I apologize.
It's such a tough question.
It is, but I think it's like the fundamental thing for us as a fandom. Like we're in this weird, I wouldn't say crisis, but like you can certainly see with the reaction to The Last Jedi and how visceral some people reacted to it. And some of that I'm sure was, you know, online, I would say false, like...
Yeah.
Feeding the flames kind of thing.
Trollish behavior, right?
Yeah, trollish behavior. But, you know, like it's out there. Like, and it did very well in the box offices. It did very well from a Blu-ray perspective. The critics liked it. Like, it is, I would say, a success. But, like, some people just absolutely, viscerally do not want it in the universe.
Right. Maybe one way we can start to adjust the fandom is to connect with people in a more real way, right? It's part of this convenience of Twitter is you can throw out a trollish comment and just be done, right? And kind of throw the match on the fire. But I've learned to just surround myself with, you know, like-minded friends and personalities. And it's interesting how much of the vitriol kind of falls away just because you don't expose yourself to it. That's not to say that you close yourself off and you don't hear other people's opinions. I think it becomes an education on our half to kind of recognize the difference between someone who just wants to stir something up or someone that has a real gripe about how Luke Skywalker was handled in The Last Jedi. Yeah. Like, if you want to have a real conversation with me about why you're disappointed about that, I'd be glad to, but I'm not going to do it on Twitter. I'm not going to do it on Facebook.
Yeah, like let's sit down and have some coffee.
Right.
Once you actually put a face to the person and genuinely see them as a human and not just somebody that is a faceless name, image, you know, on Twitter or out there on Instagram. Like Instagram can be quite nasty too, right? Yeah, definitely. And like that's why like celebration I feel is so important, because like people that hate the fandom, like why would they go to celebration?
I know it gets very complicated, right? And it's all, you know, but and I see it, and I just choose to not be a part of it, and I think that's maybe something we can all strive for, is to just choose to not engage. It's something they tell us, in media training at these big companies, is like, don't engage, because you're just feeding the fire versus, being one-on-one, like what we're doing now, which is so great, that can just be, talking, and not
and being fans together. Like,
right.
That's wonderful.
Right. Because that's how it used to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, it used to be that something came out and we could all geek out about it, right? Like this Mandalorian image that gets released. It's like, how cool is that? Like, I want to watch that show.
And like the list of directors, and like seeing, his cool gun, and the Wilro Hood ice cream maker. Like, it's all of those things.
Yeah. There's plenty of stuff to enjoy. And I think we need to focus on that, and less about these voices that are trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do. Trying to get a foothold, get a reaction.
I've thought about this for a long time, and I've talked about it before on the podcast. But like, I feel like it's like a weird light side, dark side battle within the fandom. Like those that just want to, like, I love this, and if I don't love it, I just say, meh, wasn't for me.
Right.
And then there's like this weird dark side part of the fandom that like wants to burn everything down to the ground and cause as much pain as possible.
Yeah.
Like,
there was
not to use a Force metaphor there, but
no,
I mean, the name of the podcast is What the Force.
Yeah. No, it's very appropriate. The kind of low moment for me in viewing the fandom was when there's been, unfortunately, a few low moments, but when they had to remove a happy birthday Kathleen Kennedy post from Instagram, from the Star Wars Instagram account, because the comments were just despicable. They were so mean and piled on. And, this is a filmmaker and a producer that is giving you Jurassic Park, is giving you all
Indiana Jones,
formative movies of the 80s.
She's wonderful.
Right. Yeah. And, and I'm not trying to kiss up. I've got no connection to her, but it's just what it means to be polite. And
she has given us so much in Hollywood, but also just from a leadership perspective, she is brilliant.
Right.
Like, and I have so much respect for her personally. One of my co-hosts on a segment, Ty Black, actually did this amazing, very positive video, basically explaining like why you should totally respect Kathleen Kennedy. I'll link it to you.
Yeah, please do. I would love to hear that.
She's great, and like I like, is it just a sexist thing? Like, is it just fundamentally that men don't like women?
I think that is a unfortunate large component to it. And that certainly seems to be the trend with Daisy and Kelly Marie Tran and Kathleen Kennedy. It's when there's some closed-mindedness out there that unfortunately we're getting caught up into.
And I like your thoughts on just, make it the people that you want to talk to.
Exactly. That's an even better way to put it. Surround yourself with the people that you want to talk with.
Yeah.
And that's something I tell younger artists when they're starting, is to find a group of friends that you trust and that you could show your roughest drawing to, and that they would be able to give honest feedback and know that it's not personal. If you have 2 or 3, it's quality, not quantity. And, if I have my brother that I always know I can send a text to about the latest trailer or piece of non-news that comes out, then I'm good. I don't need to bother myself with the negativity. It's just We don't need it.
Yeah, we don't need it because to me, Star Wars is about always feeling the joy of when I saw Star Wars the first time. And every time I view Star Wars, I always feel that joy, no matter what it is. Like the first episode of The Resistance, same thing.
Right.
Did you get a chance to see it?
No, I haven't yet. I have it on my queue, but I haven't cracked into it yet. But I'm super excited about it.
It's got cell shading animation style, so it's 3D
I love the
with
style, right.
the flatter cell shading, so it creates that 2D animation look. But what I appreciated about it the most, and what I love from an animation perspective, is that, you know, Clone Wars and Rebels, because of the 3D animation, kind of always looked very clean. Yes. Even when things maybe were supposed to be dirty, like they're out in a field and they're in a cave, and it still looks like the cleanest, like everything's been scrubbed down, because it was a limit of the animation style. Mm-hmm. In this, they're on this station in the middle of like an ocean planet, and it looks dirty.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
It looks dirty, and the sky looks colorful, and the like everything looks like it has character fundamentally just in the animation. So I'm really excited to see if it inspires you to draw anything.
I think that might be subconsciously why I haven't watched it yet, because I know as soon as I do, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I got to draw this, I got to draw that. Because it just, all this stuff inspires me so much. It's what I doodle. It's informed kind of the aesthetic that I like, that kind of dirty, grimy, lived in, New Hope.
And Bb-8 looks adorable in it.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. With the Droids book, I've been drawing those 3 guys so much that I close my eyes and I can see all the greeblies on R2. Like by the end of this, I'm going to be able to like draw them in my sleep. So it's good practice. But
I love R2-D2 so much. He is my favorite droid. His story is just so like good. And in the Droids month, we talked about C-3PO a little bit, and like I didn't understand why people like him. And my friend brought me around, so now I kind of understand a little bit more. Like, he is people's anxieties made real. Right. Into a personification that people can identify with, and that storytelling is very important to have people that can identify with certain characters. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that scene of the 2 of them in the desert in New Hope. New Hope, yeah. They're just going at it. It's like, it's so simple and yet so gettable. It's really universal. It's so great. So what is next for you? What are you working on? What can you share with the populace? I'm sure I would love to have you back closer to when Droid Tales comes out, or right after, so awesome. I can read the book and be like, yeah, definitely. Thank you. I'd love to be back. Anytime you want to come and just talk about Star Wars. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I could be a special correspondent. I'd love that. Right now I'm working on, because after Frozen 2, I decided, because of all the stuff that I had been working on the side, to actually make a go of being an independent artist. Mm-hmm. So I made the big leap after Frozen 2 to be independent. So I left Disney, and now I do kind of more freelance work. Mm-hmm. So right now I'm head of story on a feature film that's being produced by Alcon, which they're the studio that did Blade Runner 2049. Oh, wow. They're doing their first ever animated movie. They've done a ton of live action ones. So I'm really excited to be a part of their first feature animated movie. So that's really cool. And then I'm working on my first ever short. I'm directing an animated short, which is actually hand-drawn. So if you look at my Instagram lately for Inktober, I've been showing off some of the characters from that short. And I'm super excited about that. So that's going to be kind of returning to my roots as a hand-drawn animation enthusiast, while hopefully elevating my career into that of a director. That's good. Like, new challenge, right? New direction and new things to work on from a creative perspective, where you're pushing your own skills in a new direction, but with a skill set that you already know. Right, exactly. It's kind of taking
the experience that I've cultivated over my career and focusing them purely into stories that I want to tell. Because I've been telling other filmmakers' stories now for a long time, and I'm excited to start telling my own.
Well, I'm so excited to see what comes out of it. I love Victoria and Otto. And is it going to be along those veins? Because I love your steampunk stuff too.
Thank you. It is going to be a touch of steampunk, but it's a totally new character. His name's Jasper J. Pumpkinhead, and he's a scarecrow that wants to fly.
Have you been drawing some of him on your Instagram?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's that guy, and we've got an amazing animator named Tina Navrosky, and she's up in Canada as well, and she was an animator on the video game Cuphead, which was famous for being all animated. So she's animating the short as we speak. I'm putting the band back together of a bunch of Disney artists that I used to work with back in the hand-drawn days, so we can produce this little Halloween short that will feel like an old Disney cartoon.
When is it coming out?
Hopefully by next Halloween.
Fun.
We're about 10% animated right now. The whole thing has been laid out and storyboarded, so it's going to start moving quick soon. We've got some fun plans on how we're going to crowdsource the production costs of it. So definitely going to be a cool project.
That's awesome, because I know, like, especially like Jack Skellington and like that whole Halloween land, and it feels very much in the vein of like that idea, right? Like not the same, but like, you know, inspired or similar vein, and it's awesome. Yeah,
I like to think of it as cozy spooky, the sort of thing you'd want to watch on a rainy day when you're
in October leading up to Halloween.
exactly. So it's going to be fun.
Well, I look forward to seeing that. I look forward to Droid Tales, and C-3PO does not like sand.
Yes, he does not. He takes after his maker, I guess.
Exactly. Like, that's the perfect title.
Right. Yeah. Credit to Caitlin on that. It's pretty amazing. It was great. They revealed it at New York Comic-Con, and so you can see the YouTube clip of the panel. And when they announced it, it got a good laugh in the room. So I was pretty happy about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian, for coming on the show and just, I don't know, being a fan with me. This is a lot of fun just to chat about.
It was so much fun. I really appreciate it. And I mean, this is what needs to happen more, because people getting together and talking about the stuff they like, and it's all really positive. So this has been a great way to spend my evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So where can people find you if they're kind of looking for you out there on the web?
Yeah, Instagram tends to be the best place right now. That's where I'm most active. And that's easy. It's just my name, Brian Kesinger, with one S and an I for Brian. It's somewhat easy. And then I'm also that on Twitter. And then on Facebook, you can find me at Brian Kessinger's Tea Girls. And I have an Etsy store where people can find my previous books and prints. And I occasionally will do Lil Kylo commissions and originals. So that's a place to find those as well.
Mm-hmm. And I'll link to all of those in the liner notes for the podcast so people can track them down.
Thank you.
Click easier clicks, right?
Yeah, one button clicks.
So, exactly. So thank you again for being on the podcast. And you are welcome back anytime just to talk about Star Wars.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
This has been What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould. We now have a Patreon available at patreon.com/whattheforce. We'd like to thank our patrons who love What the Force, In Wild Space and Night Huntress, for supporting the show, as well as all of our other patrons. Check it out if you're interested in supporting the show. We will be releasing special content as well as updates through the Patreon. We are available on iTunes, Google Play, and pretty much everywhere podcasts are found, and including YouTube. Our website is whattheforce.ca. We are available on Facebook at What the Force Podcast, and you can reach out to us on Twitter at WT Force Show to start a conversation. Cheers.